Hello and welcome to the stream. My name is Lee. I am your host for today. Yeah, that's a vibe. I'm your host for today. Just remember I'm not a woman and we'll be square. What else? Cool. Life hack. Sorry. I just figured out a really cool life hack and I'm very proud of myself for it. Audio input capture. Okay. Should be good. Video capture device. Do we have desktop audio? Okay, well, we're not using desktop audio anyway, so comes out in the wash. Cool beans. Okay, let me just do the usual shenanigans like you do. Today is a very special day because we were, all right, there's that. We got this going. We got this. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, we got this going, we got that going, we got nobody in the chat yet, that's okay. We, who else can we gather? You know how it is. Nope. We go to, where do we go to? Not that one. Let's do this. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we got that going, got this going, got, what else? That and that, and, you know what, we'll pop in here and say... Okay. Beautiful. All right, that's enough of that. Either people come or they don't. We cannot control that. But we can say welcome into anyone who's here. I really appreciate it, even if you don't talk in chat. I also really appreciate it if you talk in chat, but, you know, there's that. I'm just trying to get it to... There we go. Now that the chat's on the... I like this. I like this a lot. Okay. In any case, let's do it. So today, Gottrek Gurnisson is a dwarf slayer, and Felix Jaeger is human chronicle. A duo of warriors traveling through the length and breadth of the old world, which is, ooh, wow. That Felix looks way more like a fighter than a chronicler, but okay, sure. Battling dark forces and stopping plots in Gotek's quest for a heroic death against a terrible foe. The adventures of these warriors have been written down in the series of books My Travels with Gotrek by Master Felix Jaeger, which outlines Felix's many adventures with his maniacal comrade through many of their endeavors, recording everything till the day Gotrek has finally met his doom and will finally be allowed to enter the halls of his ancestors. The skills of these two heroes are near unequal in the known world, their deeds becoming near legendary in the eyes of many of their own people. Their exploits have led these two warriors places only heard of in whispers and legends. Such extraordinary lands include them taking an expedition to the far north, toward the ancient lost hold of Caragdum, being teleported into mysterious foggy swamplands of Albion, traveling to the scorching sand-encrusted places of Araby, and even going as far east as the great city spires of legendary Cathay itself. Ooh. In these distant lands, Gotrek has cleaved a mighty toll of beasts, monsters, and warriors alike as he tries his greatest to find the glorious death that seems to elude him on every battlefield. Alongside his fearsome warrior travels a young poet and swordsman by the name of Felix Jaeger. He does not look like a poet, but sure, I'm sure he has some poetry skills. A black sheep of a rich mercantile family, this poet and writer has been with Gotrek for nearly 20 years, fighting alongside his maniacal companion as he writes down all their mighty deeds with one of his many published and popular books. Okay. Cool beans. So I promised a good friend who is not here yet, but hopefully will show up in chat. But even if he doesn't, I'm still going to do the stream because I promised it. Unless there's problems with the... Ah, yes, you are here. Good, good. Felix and Gotrek, or Gotrek and Felix. Apparently Felix is just the writer, except he... Well, anyway. Yeah, Felix and Gotrek. I'm doing the stream on them as Gotrek. Sorry. Gotrek. Yes, Gotrek. I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Gotrek. The epic, amazing slayer. Of all dwarfen kind. They're sometimes considered vigilantes of the law, and sometimes having themselves locked up by the very people they tried to protect. Such are deeds of these two have achieved in their 20 long years of battle after battle that Old World gives them a silent prayer of deliverance and thanks, for these two have done things that no mortal has ever been able to accomplish in many generations, having defended many mighty cities like Nuln and Prague from utter destruction, saved entire kingdoms from the claws of ruination, felling mighty warlords of the northern wastes, who seek to bring the end of the world as we know it. Of course they do. Sorry. Forces of evil they encounter during their journeys will always be stopped, for these two are almost unrivaled in combat and are considered among the world's most powerful heroes of this age, and many ages since. Okay. Okay. Just wanna... okay, what's the deal with Dwarfen Slayers? I am a dwarf. My honor is my life, and without it I am nothing. I shall become a slayer. I shall seek redemption in the eyes of my ancestors. I shall become a death to my enemies until the face that he has... until I face he that takes my life and my shame. Oh, that's Gotrek. Gurnison. Swearing upon the oath of the slayer. Stop that. That is him. That might be Gotrek, or might be just another dwarfen slayer standing on the bones of a slain foe. Slayers are the strangest and most deadly of all dwarf warriors. They are outlandish doom-seekers, individuals who have wholly dedicated the entire fiber of their being to the hardest and most destructive life of battle that they can possibly find. Dwarfs are proud people, and none of them cope well with failure or personal tragedy, no matter how small. The loss of a single family member or a hoard of treasure is inconsolable to a dwarf, a fate that can be seriously unhinged their obsessive minds. Eventually, these burdens become far heavier to bear, and a dwarf would eventually snap, making him forswear the fellowship and comforts of family, clan, and hold, opting instead for a life of self-imposed exile. Having broken ties with everything they once held dear, these dwarfs leave behind all possessions save for their own axes. To become a slayer is to become an engine of mass destruction, a warrior that seeks nothing more in life than an honorable and glorious death that shall expunge the shame that has pushed him upon this path, and to be remembered in the sagas of his people for all time. To first become a slayer, the dwarf must take a pilgrimage to the holy shrine of Grimir, located at the treacherous peaks of Carrick Cadrin, also known as Slayer's Keep. There the dwarf would ritually shave his head, save for a solitary crest, a fearsome plume which they dye bright orange, and stiffen with pig grease. Oh, so the orange mohawk is kind of like a thing for slayers. Interesting. The larger the crest, the deadlier the dwarf. After the ritual, the dwarfs would cut a name upon a pillar where the names of many other slayers have been carved over the millennium. With his pilgrimage finished, the dwarf would march upon the treacherous wilderness and deliberately seek out mighty battles toward fearsome foes against overwhelming odds. The life of the Slayer is solitary existence of battle after battle. Most Slayers die upon their first or second battle against their enemies. Sorry, I know the highlighting as I read thing is annoying. My mother always says that. It helps me read, but I know I'm on stream, so I'll refrain. But those that survive these battles are considered the unlucky ones. Whether by sheer martial skills, toughness, or determination, these dwarfs, though unsuccessful in their quest, have inadvertently been molded into magnificent warriors. Their natural selection weeds out all but the most exceptional of their kind, meaning that any slayer met is most likely psychopathically dangerous. A slayer continues to carve a massive toll of beast upon his axe. They often take the names of the beasts they slay. Such names include becoming a troll slayer or a giant slayer. The greatest of these already former warriors is the infamous demon slayer or dragon slayers, warriors who have managed to survive the encounter with two of the most fearsome creatures ever to live, slaying it and surviving to tell the tale. In times of war, slayers would often arrive from the wilderness to join a dwarf throng in battle, lending their considerable combat skills in the effort to further the dwarf cause. Many desperate wars have been won by frosty and sheer determination of these slayers. Even when bloodied and battered after the battle's end, they will pause only long enough to slake their thirst before beginning their death quest anew. Possibly the greatest slayer to have ever lived is Gotrek Gurnisson, bearer of the legendary axe of Grimnir, and a slayer that has killed the greatest number of enemies known to dwarf history. Your pizza slayer. Sure. Okay. I don't think pizza counts as enemies. Would you consider pizza your enemy? Because pizza I would consider an old friend, not an enemy. And if you slay friends, you're... Well, I wouldn't count pizza as a fearsome beast either. Little known fact. No, then it's delicious. Well, it depends on what you put with pineapple. It's a delicate thing. Because of their shame, pizza with olives, though, never okay. Just saying. Because of their shame and their death oath, many slayers suffer bouts of depression. This often leads to periods where they glut themselves on alcohol or food. Particularly deadly slayers are also sometimes forced to work odd jobs to finance their travels in search of increasingly dangerous monsters. Slayers will often find unusually kindred spirits in, of all warriors, the questing knight of Bretonnia. They both follow a quest, seek out the deadliest of foes, and neither of them will ever retreat or surrender. Of course, a questing knight will often abstain from drinking vast quantities of ale, but may nonetheless prove an ideal ally for a slayer, or apparently a poet. Okay, so that's the deal with slayers. So Gotrek is just a slayer who has yet to get slain. He just keeps killing. Gotrek Gurnisson is the greatest, or worse, depending on the viewpoint, because he hasn't died yet, dwarf slayer to have ever lived. This apparent contradiction is rooted in the nature of the Slayer Oath. Having committed a crime so terrible that only death in battle will serve as atonement, Gotrek has fought and slain numerous monsters, including the hordes of orcs, Skaven, a knight, a giant, trolls, chaos warlords, and sorcerers, an entire Black Ark of Nagaroth, and even a bloodthirster of Khorne. And unfortunately, in his mind, lived to fight another day. His inability to find the heroic end he seeks begins to take its toll after time, and by the events of Orc Slayer, Gotrek is becoming worried that he will remain for him a pathetic doom against an unworthy opponent like goblins, or even worse, death as a result of old age. An experienced adventurer before taking the Slayer Oath, Gotrek has traveled across many lands and faced numerous foes of the Dwarfen people, and possesses some engineering experience, including the ability to pilot gyrocopters. Cool. You know, that's fun. Gotrek also a very grim and moody figure, even by Dwarfen standards. Yeah. And possesses the same stubborn character, obsession with honor, oaths and grudges, an unerring sense of direction, prestigious love of ale, and general distrust of non-dwarfs that is typical of his people's culture. Like all slayers, Gotrek shaved his crimson hair into what usually is a crescent-shaped mohawk. He is described as broader than he is tall, heavily muscled, and wears a patch to cover the eye, which he lost in a battle with orcs and goblins. He is also far stronger than the average dwarf and is able to perceive secret passageways in seemingly impenetrable tunnel walls. He is seemingly impossible to kill, having survived, among other things, a single combat with a bloodthirster of Khorne, being hit by a stone hurled by a trebuchet, being catapulted into an orc ship, and falling 300 feet off a cliff. Okay, at this point I think the plot is messing with him. This is plot convenient armor. This is plot armor level. And you know what? Fair point. But I don't know if he realizes it's plot armor. But it's plot armor. At that point, you're like, yeah, that's plot armor. Not to say it doesn't happen in our world, which it does occasionally. People will survive really ridiculous things, but that's plot armor too. It's just we don't know our narrator. The exact nature of Gotrek's crime has never been explicitly revealed, so we don't know what he did. Like many slayers, Gotrek considers his transgressions an intensely personal shame, and is threatened to kill those nosy enough to pry. However, some hints have been revealed over the course of the novels, though the authenticity of these sources is somewhat questionable. In a vision of the Slayer's past, seen by Eric Demonclaw, it is shown that after returning from his first incursion into the Chaos Wastes... Yeah. That's true. Their doom has something else in mind for them, or the gods. Strengthened by the wielding of his axe, which the longer he keeps, the stronger he gets. The axe is part of a god. I did not get to that part yet. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. The exact nature of Gotrek... Okay, right. His signature weapon is the ancient enchanted dwarfen axe, known as the Axe of the Rune Masters. Gotrek gained this weapon during his first expedition to Caragdoon, finding it in a cave near the edge of the Chaos Wastes, near a dwarf corpse. Later revealed to be the son of King Thangrim Firebeard, Mordecai. Morkay. Oh, Morkay, son of King Thangrim Firebeard. The corpse of Morkay. Okay. Gotrek's axe is rumored to be as powerful as the one wielded by the Dwarf High King, Thorgrim Grudgebearer. This weapon is born of the Rune Masters of the Lost Dwarf Hold of Caragdoon, and is said to have originally belonged to the ancestor god Grimnir. The elven archmaid Teclis once read the magical aura of Gotrek and determined the axe's immense power has slowly changed the Slayer into something greater than an ordinary dwarf. Well, yeah, okay. So it's not just plot convenience, it's also magic axe. Felix Jaeger. Destiny's event. It is a plague, which afflicts all men, some more than others. It clings like grave mold to some, heaping upon them, making them burn bright in our eyes. You burn, but not quite so brightly as young Felix. I hoped to sever that destiny, for my sisterhood seers have foreseen that it will be inimical to us in a certain way in years to come. Lady Hamala, Felix Jaeger. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, the dwarf can kill anything with that axe. Random seer, I wouldn't think would pose much of a problem after you fight a bloodthirster of Khorne and live to tell the tale. Once you think a black arc, a single seer is no problem. Okay, fair. Greatest archmages ever. Okay, fair. I would still be nervous about fighting Gotrek, who brought down an entire freaking black arc. That's just... Okay, never mind. Reluctant companion and rememberer. Felix was a middle child of Gustav and Renetta Jaeger, a wealthy Altdorf mercantile family. Oh, he's got middle child syndrome. His three brothers became partners in the Jaeger and Sons firm, but Felix was the black sheep. At university, he combined his interest in poetry and revolution to write verses advocating nonviolence for a seditious group called the Mock Beggars. This put him at odds with Wolfgang Krasner, a fellow student revolutionary who believed in violent revolution was necessary. The greatest enemy to a revolutionary is a reformer. Sorry. The two dueled and Jaeger killed the other man. Oh. Dang, okay. For this, he was arrested but avoided being hanged by the assistance of Zavent Koringer. He was nevertheless expelled from university. Okay, who is Zavent? We're doing side history. I know you're not... Rabbit hole time. A small rabbit hole. I promise I'll go back to Gotrek and his bay in a bit. Beware, little mortal. I have already told you more than is perhaps wise for either of us. Still, you interest me, and it has been a long time since I met any mortal who has done that. I believe the last mortal I enjoyed such stimulating conversation with was the great stupid. Sorry. This is why I hate wiki. It's a very useful source of information, I'll just say that. Stimulating conversation with was the great Leonardo da Miragliano. Hamela to Zavent Koringer, who actually was the one talking about Felix with the... Yes, same one. Okay. Sage Investigator is one of the Empire's finest investigators with a wealth of scholarly knowledge and a quick and deductive mind. Yes, and he also got Felix... Okay, so he got Felix off the thing. His involvement with the country, courtly intrigues in the royal Gistoru, his Telian adventures and interventions in the vendetta disputes of feuding merchant princes. Telian as in... Okay, I remember, they're the ones who got killed off, the ancient city that got killed off by the rat, the Skaven. I remember this. I'm learning. Yeah, that's true. The company that runs them is not so fun. Luckily, the Greyhawk one has its own little separate hosting, which I appreciate. Hardcore appreciate. But, although it if you Google, it won't always come up. It often comes to the Fandom Wiki Greyhawk one. But anyway, his networks of connections stretching from the palace to the underworld ensures efficient results. He has strange sight. There's something vaguely barbaric about his stylish long white hair, though his domed forehead and hawk-like nose, he carries the bearing of a professor emeritus. He once was. He's often accompanied by his halfling assistant Vito. Koringer derides Vito's practical and unlettered approach to problem solving, though he benefits from the halfling's assistance more than he likes to admit. Sorry. They have buddies. Yeah, Google frustration. It is what it is. We work with the systems we have and try to make them better. And this is the system I have. Unless one of you wants to suggest a Warhammer fandom wiki, a fan wiki for Warhammer that is not run by fandom. Not this one. If there's another wiki for Warhammer, Fantasy or 40k that one of you would like to recommend, I'm all ears. Well, I only got 2, but they're enough. If you want to recommend one, go for it. Once a member of the cult of Sigmar, Koriger's open-mindedness and skepticism led to his dismissal from its ranks. Whilst he was not convicted of heresy, he was labeled as theologically suspect. And his relationship with the cult has become unclear. On the one hand, it does not wish to publicly associate with him, nor is it willing to reliably fund his research and investigations. On the other hand, it does recognize his expertise and surreptitiously employs him through proxies in order to investigate matters of concern. For his part, Koringer is the loyal, if orthodox, Sigmarite. He does not begrudge the cult his assistance, though he treats most priests with withering intellectual disdain. A public reconciliation between Koringer and the cult is a long way off. Okay, sorry. I'm learning. You have to understand, I don't have a lot of... when the sun rests, the world is dark, and the great fires are lit, and the ale is poured into flagons, then it is time to sing sagas as the dwarfs do. And the greatest saga is the saga of Sigmar, mightiest warrior. Hearken now, hear these words, and live in hope. The cult of Sigmar, or the Church of Sigmar, Holy Temple of Sigmar, the clergy of Sigmar, simply Sigmarite cult, is a state official religion organization that has dedicated their existence to the administrating and worship affairs of the Empire's patron god, Sigmar Heldenhammer, who was a human, if I remember correctly, that got the Dwarfen... Yes, I remember this, the Dwarfen Hammer. Founded by wild-eyed friar Johann Hellstrom in the year 37 IC, where he appeared before the masses to relate a vision. He experienced Sigmar kneeling before Ulrich, who then placed the crown of godhood upon his brow and took his place among the old world pantheons. Okay. We are going on an expedition. Also, okay, so Cult of Sigmar. I'd love to dig more into the Cult of Sigmar. Ooh, let's see. We have a new Warhammer that... Oh, ooh. Okay, Lexiconum. Official canon owning. Okay. Yes. The question is, do they have a... let's see. It's a little trickier to navigate. Oh, I have to move it over here. Okay. Yeah, sure. Hang on. Oh, there is a search bar. Okay. Shush. Okay, yeah, this one is almost, okay. We have 2 sources open. Yeah, this one is almost as annoying, but, at least it's not wiki annoying, I guess. But, I appreciate this. I will keep this in mind. Okay, let me, Lexiconum. Okay, Lexiconum is good. Let's... Yes. Okay, so we're gonna... Alright. Okay, yes. Cult of... Okay, so this guy is the... I'm gonna go off of... Okay, Slayers, we agreed. Alright, we're gonna go back to Gotrek and Felix. Yeah, no, chronology. Nature source. Yeah, no, this is a very... I mean, okay, good to know. 2 famous adventurers and heroes, extremely powerful slayer who travels through the Warhammer world seeking heroic death. Felix is his traveling companion, having sworn an oath in Altdorf to record Gottrek's doom. What is Altdorf, I wonder? Hang on. Alright, we're going on another, okay, so it's got questionable. Imperial capital of the Empire of the Old World. In the Old World. Okay, Altdorf is the capital. Seat of Emperor Karl Franz, home to the Great Cathedral of Sigmar, College of Magic, School of Engineers, and the Imperial Zoo. Oh. Okay, so he was sworn an oath when he was in the capital. Okay, good to know. They have crushed a group of aggressive mutants, exposed many chaos cults, fought against several warbands, orcs, and goblins, and vanquished several hordes of Wait a second, mutants are a thing in... Oh, yes, Altdorf is the capital of the Empire. I found that out the hard way when I could have just been reading chat. Good to know. Sorry, don't... There. Okay. Boom. Boom. Links are... Okay, hang on. Let me... No, because I want to open it in the other... Okay, and what is this mysterious thing that you are sending us to? If you're going to ask me to go to a... Wait, hang on. Oh, the lore overview. Okay, for Gotrek and Phoenix. Okay, no, wait, we're not... I'm going to keep it open, but I...
Tell your master
Nope.
that Gotrek Gurnison hasn't forgotten his oath!
Nope. Thank you. Now, that is to say... I will keep it, the tab open for now. But, okay. The window tax riots in the city of Altdorf. Gotrek rescues Felix from the Reich... Okay, Felix, half-drunk, swears an oath to accompany the Slayer in his travels. Oh! So, he rescued him one time from whom, I wonder? Okay, this is an interesting question, because... Okay, now we're getting into an interesting question. Reichsguard, here we go. The Reichsguard, Imperial Guard, is a knightly order from which the personal army and bodyguard of the Emperor and the core and backbone of the Imperial Army. Okay, cool, good to know. Right, Bob, do that. Now, plague pits of Altdorf. Slaaneshi cultists in the Reichland Forest during that short stay in the city of Nuln. Fargrim. Wait, Fargrim? Isn't Fargrim... If I remember... Or is that Fulgrim? 40k, it means something. Hang on. Tells Gotrek about a fabulous treasure located underneath the Karak 8 Peaks. Fargrim, I'm thinking it's a dwarf. Okay. Battling against goblins at Fort Von Deal in the Border Princes. Gotrek loses his left eye and Felix his first true love. Aww. Actually, I kind of want to hear about that part, but okay, hang on. Let me just check this in. Okay, being killed in the window tax riots of Altdorf. Window tax riots. Okay, so yes. Drungstuber swore a blood oath to record Gottrik's doom so that his honor could be maintained and let him be remembered of the world. A blood oath is the gravest oath a dwarf could make, even for a society obsessed with the sanctity of oaths, and so Felix was compelled to travel with Gottrick. Yeah, well, if you make an oath, you gotta keep it. So he's not gonna ditch that. A major theme in the novels is the tension within Felix between his desire to settle down in peace and comfort and away from the danger of being Gottrick's companion, and his longing to escape the banalities of civilized imperial society for a life of heroism and adventure, and its conflict shaped much of his relationship with Gottrick and his family. Also, though, he swore the oath, so even if he wanted to settle down, he couldn't. At least not until Gottrick dies, which he should any minute now, because he's throwing himself into danger. In contrast to Gottrick's taciturn absolutist mentality, Felix is a much more romantic, pragmatic figure and frequently serves as the voice of logic and moral reason of the duo in order to remind Gottrick of the long-term consequences of his actions and guide him toward a greater heroism. Isn't the whole point of Slayer that there are no long-term consequences for your action because you're going to be dead? Isn't that the whole point of Slayer thing? I mean, I guess if you survive like, I have yet to read the Felix and Gottrick novels. William Kinbig, Nathan Lungren Babby just seems to miss a bit. Oh, interesting. There are a lot of them then, if they're the first 12 are, interesting. Okay. He also finds himself serving a more diplomatic role, helping soothe bruised egos after Gottrick's anti-authoritarian nature provokes allies or civilized society. Felix is also something of a womanizer and has formed several romantic relations. Oh, sorry. No, it's just the way they're paired together. You're like, somebody ships it. But if he's known womanizer, that's, a thing. Just saying. King, I typoed. I figured... Well, actually, no, I did not figure that, because King... If you said King William, I would have assumed that you meant King, but... Well, of course there are more than 12 if you've read the first 12. Yeah, well... Taking up another author's characters and writing them convincingly is a unique challenge that, Yeah, that's true. Once you kill a Khorne Bloodthirster, you can only up the stakes so much before it becomes... Yeah, you can't keep upping the stakes and expect... There's at a point at which it becomes mimic how much the stakes get upped, and it just doesn't... The stakes don't feel real anymore, and it's just a whole thing. Human with a swordsman's physique and long blonde hair who favors chain shirt and a red cloak. Over years of following Gotrek, Felix has become an accomplished swordsman and a duelist. His own weapon is the rune sword Karagul, a blade with the dragon hilt recovered from the fallen horde. Okay, does no one wield regular old weapons? Sorry, my landlady is vacuuming right now. Yes, you absolutely do need a definite ending. Like, he needs to die at some point, because that's how... He deserves to die. Gotrek, being the greatest slayer ever, deserves to die an epic death against someone powerful. Maybe, like, a mutual death, or, like, whoever kills him is barely holding on, so Felix kills them and then gets to go settle down after Gotrek's noble death and whole shebang. Time spent in Prague fighting the Chaos Invasion was cool, as well as Albion versus the Chaos Giant. Oh, I'm sure. Very cool. A relic of the Knights of Order of the Fiery Heart. Knights of the Order of the Fiery Heart. It was forged for the purpose of slaying dragons. As shown in Dragon Slayer, it grants him a shield from a dragon's fiery breath. Ooh. I think I did something like that with a magic item. Well, no. I had a magic item that only gave you resistance to fireball. That's it. It was a ring that gave you resistance to fireball spells. In general, like, resistance to fire, like, partial resistance to fire damage as well, but mostly it was just made you immune to fireballs. Of course he was. I feel like this is an Age of Sigmar thing, but he should die at some point. May contain spoilers, you think? As the decades pass, old acquaintances comment that Felix is not aged a day. First shrugged off as niceties, this soon became fact when, in Elfslayer, Max Schreibner verifies that Felix has indeed become immortal. Of course he has. Or as close to as it makes no difference. Upon self-inspection, Felix also discovers that many of his old scars and wounds have vanished from his body. Max attributes this immortal state to various causes, from both Felix and Gottrik's magical weapons, to some force encountered during their sojourn and the Chaos Wastes, to his passing through the wormhole in Sylvania. Many of his diaries concerning his and Gottrik's adventures have been published by his brother Otto. Ooh! Sorry. The outlandish impossibility of the tales in question have brought most of its readers, including Otto, to believe it to be pure fiction. Oh, sorry. It's exciting stuff. And Otto, sorry. I feel like Otto Jaeger has like a I feel like he never mind. He's probably just a nothing character. I just really think because Otto is a cool name. Okay, fair enough. So he's not immortal. Well, I mean, yes, but at what point does immortal become like if you live until someone dies you? Is that not a form of immortality? And it's certainly much different than the mere humanity of regular average human who could be killed by a who can just live long enough to die. You know what I mean? Like if he lives for 500 years and doesn't age beyond the average human of 60, is that not pretty much immortality? If you consider it? I mean, not true immortality, but, you know, something close to. Was a talented engineer amongst his people. For many years, his profession was not one of destruction and violence, but one of science and logic, designing and crafting wondrous inventions for the benefit of his kingdom. Whether it was fate or the hands of the god that intervened in Gottrik's life will never be known, as all of that is for sure is that his life changed forever when he journeyed to the northern wastes. As part of an expeditionary force led by Boric Forkbeard, Gottrik was entitled to aid in the protection and care of a convoy of heavily armored steam wagons whose purpose was to reach the ancient lost hold of Carag Dûm, deep within the chaos wastes of the north. Though protected by armored steel and magical enchantments, the convoy was bogged down by the unnatural landscape of the waste, and the convoy's occupants slowly died by dehydration, starvation, mutation, and things far worse. One by one, the wagons were destroyed or fled back until one wagon remained, hopelessly venturing ever further through the lands of unknown until attack from a beastman herd had destroyed the vehicle, leaving only Gottrik, Snorri Nosebiter, and the expedition leader Boric Forkbeard still alive. Seeing the expedition as the lost cause, the survivors tried to trek back toward their homeland, but massive storms suddenly sprang out from the depths of the waste, huge dust clouds smothering the very sky until finally Gottrik was separated from his two companions. Seeking refuge from the storm, Gottrik delved deep within the cold, dark cavern where he was beset by a horde of beastmen, eagerly confronting their next prey. Trying desperately to find a way to fight against these monstrous foes, Gottrik went ever deeper into the tunnel. It was finally deep within the depths that the tunnel of Gottrik's destiny caught up with him, for there lay a long-dead dwarf prince surrounded by a mass of mangled bodies of beastmen and demons. His dead skeletal hands held an artifact of dreadful power, forged in ancient times, powerful enough to kill even the monsters of chaos. Upon touching the axe, Gottrik's life changed irrevocably. After butchering the horde that tried to kill him, Gottrik wearily traveled back to his homeland, growing more and more powerful as he sought desperately for the comforts of hearth and kin. However, upon arriving in his village where there was nothing but ruin, bodies and burned houses everywhere, the dwarf entered a stone house, and within sprawled the wretched body of a dwarf woman and her child. Gottrik bowed his head at the sight and wept. Okay, so just a random dwarf woman and a child, or was it specifically some woman that he loved, a sister, an ex, a what, you know, his wife maybe? After an unknown length of time, Gottrik found himself in the halls of the dwarf lord. I mean, okay, yes, seeing children dead is... I mean, I went and took months' worth of classes. Oh. Hang on, there are stuff on Otto Jaeger. Sorry, I got distracted by... This is why you have to figure out a better way to do this so I can remember to chat. Otto is what Felix was supposed to be, a merchant living a good life but boring. Otto Jaeger is a nice bit of lampshading, though, giving some credence to the notion that Felix and Gottrik's stories are exaggerations, not necessarily true. Otto represented the typical Empire citizen, cloistered away from the dangers that were everywhere, denying things like Skaven, cultists, and many other things as myth. That's true, too. Interesting. Yeah, it's a lampshading that, okay, yeah, maybe there are exaggeration bits. It's also, I think it might be the same thing that Warhammer 40k books do, where they say that every Warhammer 40k Expanded Universe novel is written by, is account written by someone in universe, and so therefore, if it's not necessarily that way they can be flexible with canon, because they can say, well, it was written in universe, therefore people can lie, and sources aren't always right, and sometimes people misinterpret stuff, and, that's true. They both things, both can be true, but it is an interesting thing of the flexibility of canon, like, that, oh yeah, Otto might have edited something out if it turns out later that it happened and it wasn't in the books. Well, Otto edited it out. You can do stuff like that. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room with canon as well. I just really like the name Otto, and I have a affinity for people named Otto. Yeah, but what I was going to say is that I ended up, it is to see a child, like, there was, I was working at the hospital, and there was a kid who came in, I don't even know. The kid was okay. She survived, but they had to put her on a ventilator for a little bit. And just seeing such a small child on a ventilator, it messes with your mind. So, okay, I can kind of see where that comes from of just a mother and her child just... That might have messed him up a little bit. Arguing passionately with the long-bearded noble... there was a sneer on the noble's lips. He spoke mockingly, it seemed, and made a chopping gesture with his hand, perhaps forbidding Gotrek to do whatever he wished to do, or perhaps even ordering his death. The older dwarf shook his head and grinned darkly at Gotrek, and then ordered the guards to seize the axe-bearer. It was a mistake. Within a span of a few minutes, all that was left of the hall were bloody dwarf corpses. Driven by shame and grief for what he had done, Gotrek took up a knife and hacked away at his hair, as soon as it was shaved bare, save for a small, rough strip. And so Gotrek, rode out to the world and became the slayer he was destined to be. Wait a second, his shame is very, oh, Felix's dad died? That's sad. But, his shame is the secret. No, it's not. Unless it's secret in universe, it very clearly is written out of what happened. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, he kills at anyone who asks about it, but, like, the information is available. It's not... I would say that would be misleading, rather, to say it would... Okay, oh, right, we have to scooch this up. Okay, now I can... Yeah, there we go. Is not a man at first glance the hero many believed him to be, for he was once the son of a wealthy merchant family and a poet at the University of Altdorf. Okay. Book 3. Okay, so he didn't end up at the shrine until book 3. Still, he did end up at the shrine, which is good. And a poet at the University of Altdorf. His whole life, Phoenix had dreamed of many great adventures he had read about in books and stories of his childhood, and so decided becoming a successful poet and writer in the university, hoping to achieve such heights. So he wanted to write about heroes because he'd read about heroes as kids. The grim reality of his life shattered his dreams forever. The day Felix accidentally killed a student in a sprawling match during his year as student. Okay, accidentally or on okay, so... Uh-huh. Okay. Well, cool beans. So did Felix accidentally kill this guy, or did they duel to the death? Or was it sort of a combination where they fought over something dumb and then killed him in... Or was the accident thing, like, cooked up by, the investigator, Zavend, who was like, okay, you were right to kill him, we need to figure out how to get you off on this. Or he didn't, figured he didn't deserve it, so he just was like, alright, let's get you off on this. Having been kicked out of the university, Felix soon became an instigator in the infamous window tax riot. The riots became so bad that the Emperor had his right guard come in to quell the fighting, where Gotrek saved young Felix from death charge of the knights as the horsemen cleaved through the tightly packed masses of protesters and agitators. Ooh, lovely. Emperor has some of the same problems we do. Bit unclear. Okay, that's fair. After the incident, the two came into a tavern, and there young Felix got drunk on booze and misery alongside his new companion. The two talked, and they spoke. Felix became more and more interested in Gotrek's tale of glory and fame, and thought of an idea to make a good book and even possibly being able to return to the university. In a drunken stupor, Felix unwittingly promised Gotrek that he'd be the dwarf's chronicler and write down his deeds and tales until the day they met his doom. Gotrek thusly took up a knife and unlikely pair swore their blood oath of brotherhood. On that day, the destinies of these two warriors became legendary for ages to come. Geheimen Schnacht Eve. Geheimen Schnacht means night, right? Or Nacht means night. I know that. After the terrible events and nightmare adventures, implemented tax to raise money on charging homes per window they had. And, of course, tax raises... I mean, revolutions are based on taxes. At least in this country. Tax hikes never go over well. I'm actually a big fan of taxes, but, I can see why, once you start poking holes to create windows, that's where... once you start unfairly creating windows. Like, I get, like, in hypothetically, you could say, okay, well, wealthy people have homes with more windows. But if there was a traditional cult that, like, worshipped the sun, for example, instead of Sigmar, and therefore technically had more windows in their houses, they could, argue it. Or if it was more expensive to put really big windows in, instead of a bunch of small ones, so actual wealthy people only had to pay tax for one window, where people who don't have that kind of money would have to pay for, like, 3 or 4 to have the same amount of light, and therefore they'd also have more taxes on top of that. That would be, like, there are caveats of that, like, that of course any imperial government would exploit, or, exactly, which means that they'd have a whole thing. Interesting. So it's a double full moon. Geheimnisnacht. Okay, Geheimnisnacht. I can pronounce it now. So it's 2 full moons at the same time, which, if you have multiple moons, is probably a big deal. What even? Alright, hang on. What? Oh, this one! My art book of... I forgot about this one. I have this really cool... Okay, well now it's covered in crumbs, but... I forgot about this. I assumed it was the fancy version of the other book, but it's not. It's a unique one. And sorry, I have a stack of books that sits right next to me here. Samhain is the technical term, but, sure. I have a stack of books that sits next to me, and it just fell over. But this one was at the bottom, and it's a really good... It has a few crumbs on it, but it's a really good book. A really cool book that I got for art, for Kickstarter. And it just has beautiful art, and... Wow, yeah, it has beautiful art. Okay, we're gonna put this over here. Give me half a second to fix my stack of books. No, you go near the top, because you're smaller. Oh, man. One of my notebooks lost its cover, which is a shame. When they lose their covers like that, they start falling apart. And the whole thing. Nope. Example A of that is this one, which is my stream notebook. These guys go on top, I guess. Yeah, because they're smaller. Okay. Sorry about that. Back to your regularly scheduled shenanigans of Felix and Gotrek. Okay. Or Gotrek and Felix, depending on which way you want to go. I mean, I do not play Warhammer Mystery. I play 40k, unless you were asking mystery. As in mystery, as in, you have to capitalize. If you're gonna, you need a comma and capitalization. Sorry, I'm a grammar snob. Comma and capitalization. Comma is important in that case. Exactly. That is how you do. You put the commas. This is important. Altdorf Press 2505. After the terrible events and nightmare adventures we endured in Altdorf, my companion and I fled southwards, following no path more certain than that chosen for us by blind chance. The extent and nature of the evil was to become very clear to me one dark evening after boarding a southbound stagecoach on what is perhaps the most ill-omened night of our entire calendar. Gehemensnacht Eve. So the night before the full moons? Yes, I do the same, but with 40k, where you RP the roleplay, but never actually do the tabletop. Okay, let's see. If I do it like this, it's actually really useful, because I don't accidentally put my mouse over to the edge. That's pretty cool. Was now wanted man for being the main instigator of the infamous window tax riot, along with his new companion Gotrek, who also a wanted criminal for killing several Right Guard knights during the chaos. In an effort to escape captivity and possible execution by the Emperor's forces, the duo fled south upon a stagecoach through the forest. During their exodus, Gotrek got into an argument with the coach driver on a matter of not being inside the coach. The argument eventually boiled into a full fight, and Gotrek and Felix were unwittingly dumped into the Reichwald on unholy night of Gehemensnacht Eve, where the demon moon Morseleb was at its largest and brightest of all year. Without any transport, the two heroes walked on foot along the roadside, hoping to find an inn further down the path. Gotrek was not pleased by the treatment he'd gotten from the coachers, and grumbled and cursed along the way. Felix was not feeling too good himself, for he felt ill, possibly a fever had caught before the riot. Oh, poor thing, he got sick. As they traveled, Gotrek grew with bloodlust and demanded that the ancient evils of the night give him a champion worthy of his axe. Of course, this ends bad. Do not demand that. I mean, if you want to die in battle, that's how you die in battle, I guess. But the lore is definitely more exciting than the game. Agreed. Favorite type of character to play. Alright. Fantasy. That's interesting, yeah. This is not something you want to do. As they traveled, Gotrek grew with bloodlust and demanded that the ancient evils of the night give him a champion worthy of axe, which is probably a bad idea, but, As if answered by the ancient powers, far, far off in the distance, a large jetpack stagecoach roared past the duo, almost trampling them in its wake. Luckily, Felix jumped out of its path onto a pile of leaves and brush before it reached him. Gotrek stood defiantly in its way. Okay. You know what? Fine. Gotrek, sorry. I'm just like, Gotrek, why? I can see why you wanted me to do this. I feel like these guys are cool. Oh, you guys still can see the... One minute. That is true. It is hard to choose type of character. Upon his recovery, he found Gotrek still alive, filled with excitement and fury, and ordered Felix to follow him toward the coach. Felix reluctantly followed. As they followed the Bogenhafen Road, they found themselves on the doorsteps of a small roadside tavern known as Standing Stone's Inn. At first, the inn looked deserted. Not a single light was lit, and no sounds were heard instead of the few ponies in the stable. Apart from the few ponies in the stable, instead of the few ponies in the stable, that is not how you construct a sentence in English that makes sense. I'm not going to edit it. I'm swearing off wiki editing. You know what? I could, actually, probably do multiple lore dumps on these guys. But, okay, let me see what happens, because I want to know what happens to these guys with the... Ooh! I'm not opposed to playing... Well, okay. Felix argued with Gotrek at least stay for the night before the pressed on after the coach, but only a mention of ale proved to be Gottrek's downfall. The door to the inn was boarded and locked, though Felix tried to persuade its occupants to let them in. Only Gottrek's act convinced them to open the door while it was still intact. Upon entrance, Felix apologized to people in Gottrek's rudeness and then sat down at the table in the main room. I'm gonna say probably don't, but I kind of want to hear how this ends and what's the deal with the inn. While Felix managed to get some information about the jetpack coach seen earlier, both the innkeeper's family and several commoners said they were present by both the innkeeper's family and several commoners. They protested in the tavern from both. This is not the correct use of prepositions. Okay, see, this person has informative, but they lack grammar, and I'm not going to edit this. I pinky promise swear I'm not editing more than one wiki. But after drinking his fill, Gotrek burst into a vigor of activity, excited by the prospect of battle that might finally find his doom at last. Together with Felix, Gotrek set off on the trail of the road, eager to find a foe. Okay, so he's not going to stay for a little bit, but they will get drunk. Alright. Deep in the forest of Reichwald, the duo crept through the underbrush, silent and tense. Gotrek was essentially talkative especially talkative. Gotrek's the one that's not talkative. I feel like he's gone crazy. Okay. The pair exchanged words for a time, until finally Felix broke the tension by asking Gottrek's very demanding question. What was it that Gotrek had done to drive him to this? Maybe I'll start editing grammar at some point. I might start editing grammar at some point. It might have been. In which case, if you copy-paste something, you edit the grammar. That's, the important, A, you read it first, and B, you edit the damn grammar. That's common courtesy. Okay, copying and pasting is an important factor, and yes, it allows you to... is much easier, but, you know? Alright. The question rocked Gotrek, his muscles bulging as if restraining fury with him. Gotrek's response was that he would kill any other man if he asked that question to him, but due to Felix's youth and ignorance and the bond of friendship they shared, he would spare him from a gruesome death. Okay, Felix asked. He said no. Okay, it grew tense and quiet for a few months until the duo heard a maniacal laughter coming from deep within the forest. Their mutant walked idiotically toward Felix. Okay, I want to know what the mutants is in this version of Warhammer, because... yeah. Okay, fair. Actually, to be fair, a good chunk of Europeans do have English as a first language, because England is part of Europe. No matter what they say, they are part of Europe. But, fair. For anyone from mainland Europe, English would not be their first language. And yes, I don't hold it against people that they have bad grammar. It just frustrates me that, I want to fix it, you know? No, this is not how English is. Nah, you know? But yeah. Okay, I want to know what the deal with the mutants are, but also, hang on. Cut off the abomination's head, before it could leap. The two heard distant chanting further into the dark and followed the strange sound to its source. There the duo spied a disturbing sight, a dark ritual taking place with many mutants of all kinds writhing in a mass of excess as they praised the word of Slaanesh. Slaaneshi cultists, love it. Felix watched fear-stricken at the sight of the drummers with the heads of goats, pipers with the heads of dogs, mutated men and women all together in the ceremony, and finally, one thing the duo had searching for, the black coach. The door swung open, and from within emerged a man and a woman carrying a child. The drums increased in the temple, and finally the man placed the child on an altar. Their dancers began to dance. The robed man produced a knife at its height, and as a mist of eldritch energies appeared over the young sacrifice, Felix couldn't take it anymore, and together with Gotrek, assaulted the cultist. Yeah, I know. That's why I try not to hold it against people, but it just is really frustrating. Ugh. I might go back and start editing. I might have to, if I'm gonna... The great battle ensued between the two heroes and their dark adversaries as Gotrek cleaved a hefty toll of dead within his mighty axe, while Felix managed to hold his own. However, the cultist numbers were overwhelming, and Gotrek was finally overcome by a wave of bodies. Hoping to finish the rituals once more, the cultist leader held the knife high once again, and the mist began to take shape in a monstrous demon. In desperation, Felix gave a prayer to Sigmar and threw the dagger at the cultist, hoping to stop the ritual before it was too late. Sure enough, the blade managed to hit the throat of the cultist leader. Sigmar for the win, or was it just Felix's skill? We'll never know. And with the untimely death of their master, the mutants all fled in fear. Gotrek's body burst from the sea of mutants and began a massacre of gruesome proportions, and the mutants' courage was finally broken. After the battle, Gotrek rescued the young, still living infant, while Felix unmasked the cultist leaders. Beneath the mask, the face of the innkeeper's son stared up at the dark moon, and his bride to be alongside him. With a sad sigh, he told Gotrek, "I don't think we'll be going back to the inn." Oh. I mean, it makes sense that it's in Latin, because honestly, Latin is commonly used by writers who write in English to be, like, spooky sounding, but B, have enough familiarity because it's been seeped into our languages for so long that it kind of, the sound of it invokes ancient rituals in the cultural zeitgeist, and B, you can kind of guesstimate at the meaning based on cognates, and that actually is a really useful tool for, contiguous. It's like, exactly, that's why they use Latin for the language, is because it's a dead language, which means no one speaks it anymore, so you're not going to have any native speakers, which makes it good for purposes other than, you're not using someone else's language, you're using an actual foreign language. B, it's used enough that there's translation available, so you can actually get it to, and B, that style is seeped into the cultural zeitgeist, is old and ancient. That's seeped into our cultural zeitgeist is something ancient and important because of all of the legal terms are in Latin and stuff like that, and medical terms. So it kind of has that air of authority when used, and also it's a perversion of our highest offices, which is kind of like a spook factor. And people can kind of guesstimate based on the cognates, which is, an important factor. Like, it kind of gives it this just off mean. It's a whole thing. The infant was found on the doorstep of Shalia temple a day later. A camel necklace around the infant's neck, a sack of gold beside it, wrapped in the red Cinderland cloak, Felix's cloak. The two never returned to the inn again. Oh. Well, yeah, okay. The whole point is that oftentimes when people use Latin for cult, they'll either A, purposely, or B, because they don't know what they're doing, and are careless, doctor it so that it's not actual Latin, because these people aren't Latin scholars. They write ancient rituals. And that also suggests that it is, that it is written, that it is weird. Like, it's not quite the Latin we know. It is this weird perverted version of Latin, which is kind of a suggestion of that in and of itself. There's metatextual reasons why it is the way it is. Shalia is... You think mercy is for the weak? 'Twas Shalia's mercy that healed my broken arm so I could lead the vanguard against beastmen in our last campaign. You're saying that makes me weak? Think carefully before you answer, lad. Sergeant Marcus Orton to a green recruit. Shalia is known as the White Dove of Mercy, and the Lady in White is the goddess of mercy, compassion... Stop it. Go away. Thank you. Mercy, compassion, healing in the Old World pantheon. She is of the family of classical gods, the daughter of Mor, the god of the dead, and Varen, the goddess of knowledge and law, sister to Myrmidia, goddess of war. She is portrayed as fair young maiden whose eyes are perpetually well with tears for the suffering of the world. Ever merciful, she is characterized in myth as almost naive trust displayed when Roland tricked her into allowing him to gain apotheosis, or when Manon trapped her at the bottom of the sea. The old world is a hard place in which to live. Disease, injury, or extended bad fortune can drive a man or a woman to the brink of despair, bereft of any hope. These people turn to Shalia, cries tears that bring the promise of mercy and comfort. To those confined to prisoner, sickbed, people condemned to death, or who are dying on or off the battlefield, Shalia and her priestesses and priests For a few men serve her order too, bring peace and forgiveness with the promise of a better life in the next world. The cult of Shalia has a presence throughout the old world, and her temples double as hospitals for those too poor to afford a physician's house calls. In the Empire, each of the cities and major towns has a whitewashed temple to Shalia, and even in the small towns and villages, the temples and shrines of other gods will often contain a small chapel dedicated to the Lady in White. There she is. Okay. So that's Shalia. What I want to know, though, is, okay. Mutants include, see, I mean, okay, so so it's third person. That's not tense. That would be person, not tense. There is a difference. Also, third person is often used by, so singular third person. Person and tense are not the same thing. Although they both can affect verb conjugation, and therefore are in the same category, but so can other things like, well, anyway, point being, yes, person and tense are not the same thing, but they both can affect verb conjugation. So there's that. He, she, it loves. Okay, yeah, but that actually could make a little bit of sense. It can also be used in the general person. So a lot of times they is used, or like in the French, il y a, for example. Il means he, right? So it's a third person singular pronoun. But what in the term il y a, it just means there is. Like, which is, il y a un garçon, there is a garçon, or il neige, it snows. Like, it's not it's singular third person used in the vague general sense. Or minya zavut. Zavut is is the third person plural, like, it's just, they call me, kind of a vague reference to they, as in people, as in, so, what they might be going for is, they love you, Slaanesh, or like, the everyman loves you. They love you, Slaanesh. They love you, Slaanesh. I think would be a kind of vibe from it, as opposed to we love you, but just they love you. The world loves you, hypothetically. Of course, the world does not love Slaanesh. Well, okay, that's not necessarily true, because you could argue, well, okay, I'm not going to get into the arguments of theology, but my point is, it doesn't make as little sense as you'd think it might make, if you consider it from that perspective. Whew. Sorry. Okay, mutants, though, the reason I want to pipe up mutants is because mutants are a thing in 40k. Human mutant. Those born with chaos cause mutations, as well as those that develop them later in life. Mutants range from individuals desperate to belong to the rest of society who conceal their form to the best of their ability, to those that embrace chaos completely, join a chaos cult, and turn all their efforts to overthrowing the Empire and other civilized realms of the old world. Ah. So you actually understand Latin as a language. You're actually, like, familiar with the language. I'm not so much because, well, I got kicked out of Latin class in, high school because of a stupid thing with the IEP, and I never fucking forgave them for that, because I wanted to know Latin, because that meant something. Anyway, I never fucking forgave the school for that bullshit that lasted years, and it was my mother's, and my mother wouldn't believe me when I fucking listened. Sorry, I have issues with that bullshit when I was in high school, but I got kicked out of Latin class because of it, and, I really pissed about it still, basically. Regardless of their intentions, many mutants try to live as mundane humans if their mutations will permit it. If not, they are only alive because either they fled from authorities or were abandoned in the woods as children, and the life of an outcast is the only one they've ever known. Some, particularly those with animalistic appearances, may be adopted by beast and werebans. Okay, so, werebands, mutants, okay, yes. So, the question, though, is because how do you know that a mutation is chaos and not wonky DNA? Because a lot of things cause mutations in, dang. Dude, I would have, if you'd asked nicely, I would have pushed the stream back. I just picked noon, because I figured it was a good one for, Yeah, I would have pushed the stream back, honestly, if you text... You... yeah, you need sleep. They knew what you meant, though, when you said that. Once I realized... I kind of, realized what you were talking about in a minute, because I thought you might mean that it should be past or future, and then I was like, oh, he, she... Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with that. Alright. The mutant shall be slain, glorious with the slaying of it. For the mutant is the preservation of purity, perversion of the purity of man, and man is the master of the world. Only in man is there salvation and freedom from the world's corruption. The forest shall be cut, the beast shall be hunted, the mutant shall be slain, and the glorious will be and glorious will be the slaying of it. The liturgy of Sigmar. Okay, that actually makes sense. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's the same thing in 40k as people in world think it's a result of sinful action, but it seems to be more of exposure to the radiation of chaos from the warp. It's pretty obvious the mutations. They are like crazy stuff like eyeball growing out of your hand, 7 years, etc. That's true. Or magic, also based in the warp. Yeah, magic is right, because magic is warp based in... I assume it's based in warp based in Warhammer Fantasy too. Exactly. That's the main thing with 40k, is that since there's no way to tell, Fear the Mutant also does include people with simple birth defects that are just weird genetic quirks of humanity, or based on radiation that is not chaos based. Like, it's not like uranium, like R-style radiation, which causes as much DNA bullshit as, say, what's the one? As warp mutation, right? And also exposure to the warp. Yeah, and because things that are exposed and linked to the warp are dangerous. But there are, born with, say, 6 fingers or something. That's a relatively harmless mutation. So I would assume that, yes, there are people who embrace chaos. Ancient aliens built a warp gate in the north pole of the planet, and then it broke, so it's been open portal to the warp ever since, letting chaos gods and their minions flood into the world. Yeah, it makes sense. I just always thought it was kind of a... Like, there are probably people who have relatively minor mutations that aren't even caused by chaos. I know that much. A lot of the ideas grew out of Warhammer Fantasy, and so I was curious to see where it had started in Fantasy, whether there was a different definition or something. But yeah, because once you get to a certain heavy level mutation, it's very clear that that's chaos cultists. Nobody's born with that, so it just always, Fear the Mutant always suggested that there were people who took mutations on who had no intention of being chaos cultists or anything. They just ended up, unwittingly mutants, and then they got killed and hunted, and it always made me sad. But, so Beastmen are also interesting in Fantasy, because in 40k they're the Beastmen are they were human mutations caused by they were abhumans, which mean that they weren't necessarily chaos mutants. The thing about abhumans is that they're heavily mutated humans, but they're proper strains of genetic drift based on millennia of being on different planets, not necessarily chaos. And since they're and whether or not an abhuman strain is considered acceptable, I actually had a group of rogue traders who went and rescued people who had mutations, including a girl who grew a second set of arms, and her family had kept her alive for years until she was captured and was going to be executed until one of our people on our crew stepped in, and they actually made her I mean, yeah, I mean, you're exhausted. That's very fair and forgivable. But yeah, they had their secretary who had four arms and could dual wield pistols because she could actually use two hands to shoot on each side because she had four. But she usually just worked as a secretary and took notes and followed one of the PCs around and stuff. She was adorable and one of my little favorite NPCs. Because when you have a rogue trader, you have an entire crew full of people. You try to make some of their crew members likable, and then they get attached and appoint them to being secretaries and stuff. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Shalya, that actually makes sense as something a priestess of Shalya would do. No, true, people don't often listen if there's declaration, especially that. Although, they have their emperor alive to make declarations, which is 40k people do not really. Until they get a text-to-speech device, and that's a whole separate non-canon thing, but is hilarious and a vibe. So Kark 8 Peaks. Typical of my companion that for no more than a slim provocation he was willing to risk life and limb in the wildest, most barren place imaginable. Or perhaps it was typical of the effect of gold fever on his people. As I was later to see, the lure of that glittering metal had a terrifying and potent power over the minds of all of that ancient race. In any event, the decision to travel beyond the Empire's most southernmost borders was a fateful one and led to the adventure of dreadful consequence which haunt me still. Volume 2, Herr Felix Jaeger. Okay, hang on. F it, we're editing this. We're doing the thing. We're doing freaking. I think we should be able to edit, right? We can't. Okay, you know what? There's no edit button. That's fine. That's fine. We're gonna. Wait, is that light theme? No. Contents. 8 Peaks. There should be. Most wikis have up here, maybe. No, that's for that. View sources. Hang on. The action of request limits the user in one of the groups. Pages protected or prevented to prevent editing or other actions. Okay, so it cannot be edited. Therefore, yeah, no, I'm off the hook from having to edit because it is uneditable. I kind of like this. No, I don't. And I am not making one just to edit that, but, you know? Like, ugh. Most southernmost. That is redundant. Like, no, you know? Alright, I'll stamp ranting and raving. Okay. Tiny thing. So they dumped the kid with a little they made him like a hammer necklace, and I'm not gonna start my own Warhammer Fantasy wiki. I don't have the sort of lore skill that would be required to. No. I'm not dragging into this. I mean, I appreciate the fandom, and I'm not gonna start my own wiki. I'm not. I promise I'm not. It's fine. It's just a little grammar mistake. It's fine. I mean, whoever wrote it might not know English and might not understand the redundancy. It's probably just an honest mistake. I mean, if you asked her nicely, she might make a Warhammer Fantasy map. I mean, depending on how nicely you asked. I mean, she's got a lot of stuff on her plate. Wait a second. I'm sure it would be a hefty commission, but, I mean, I don't think she has any moral opposition to it, and probably would if you managed to commission her enough. But the truth is, funding that kind of commission for a real expert is a lot of money. Worth it, but also, if you don't have it, okay, hang on. Here's the thing, though. If hang on. Oh, right, because Greyhawk, they don't care that much because they don't actively use Greyhawk. But yeah, having a commission for a fan, yeah, Games Workshop actually, like, will inevitably defend their commission, TSR doesn't as much. They're not TSR, they don't exist anymore. Wizards of the Coast, at least for Greyhawk, because they figure Greyhawk is kind of, I wouldn't say defunct, but they don't actually publish stuff in Greyhawk anymore, except for the stuff they usually publish, which just kind of assumes Greyhawk in a weird sort of way. Like, a lot of the spells, they keep the name of Greyhawk's wizards, even though they don't, explain what, like, Tasha, like, yeah, Igwilv called Tasha was a freaking Mordenkainen. Like, they keep all the wizards and stuff, but they don't add the context for the... Calm, cool, collected. Sorry. They just don't publish as much Greyhawk stuff anymore. And, yes, they do, I know. They shut down, freaking... If the Emperor had a text-to-speech device. And it just... come on, that was awesome. It was a lot of fun. We loved it. Yeah, they do tend to shut down fanworks. But my point on that was if Felix hadn't thrown that dagger into the head cultist's neck and Gotrek had died, Gotrek would have had his doom. He almost had his doom. Felix actively prevented, that's true. Yeah, they do take it out, which is really stupid. Like, they freaking, it is really annoying because they have that whole setup for DM's Guild. It's just like, there'd be no drawbacks. I mean, not no drawbacks, I'm sure there are some, but, like, negligible. And certainly no more than letting people do, Spelljammer or content on, or, freaking, what's the word? Forgotten Realms or Eberron or whatever other fandom, settings. Yeah, Felix would probably die not soon after. Sure, but he also has lived exceptionally long for a human, and he, it wouldn't necessarily die. I mean, whatever his, thingamabob is, it's not necessarily a whole, how to explain this? Yeah. Like, his long life might not be tied to Gotrek, so if he managed to survive whatever killed Gotrek, which, granted, would be unlikely, then, he could just go and settle down. I don't know if there'd be anything stopping him other than, inevitability of fate or whatever. But he managed to, because if he hadn't killed, what's his face? If he hadn't killed, that's true. That's true. But if he hadn't killed that cultist right before the sacrifice, then Gotrek might have died. And if Gotrek had died, he would have had his doom as a Slayer, his proper, And so I think it would have been, like, this is, it's just really, it's like a whole thing. Like, you can see exactly when Felix, caused, like, he prevented Gotrek's doom. And it just, anyway. Wow, okay. But yeah. I think I'm gonna call the stream here, if you guys don't object. Because my roommate is starting up the vacuuming and stuff, and it's getting worse, and, I mean, I feel like that feels like a, I mean, Felix could stop saving Gotrek all that time, if he knew that Gotrek really wanted to die as a Slayer, you know what I mean? Just an interesting irony. But I'm going to end the stream here if you guys do not object. And, my plan was, let's see. Raid? Who could we raid? Troll Lord Games is playing. Let's raid Troll Lord Games. The False Dragon. I bet it's fun. Yeah, we're going to raid Troll Lord Games. Okay, hang on. Wait. On raid. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate all of you guys hanging around. Ooh! Fun new follower, the Uncouther. Welcome. Thank you for following. Feel free to say hi in chat. I always appreciate it. But yeah, thank you for following. But yeah, we're gonna end the stream now. If no one objects, well, I guess we're gonna do that anyway. But, thank you all. If anyone, wants to join the, not that one, the Discord, my own personal stream Discord, you are always welcome to, let's see. Yeah. And also, just thanks for stopping by. Next Saturday, I think we might also be doing a Greyhawk, a Warhammer 40k, not a 40k, a regular Warhammer Fantasy stream, because Darktide, I think, is a Warhammer Fantasy game. But yeah, really cool. Okay, now we're raiding Troll Lord Games. Ready? Let's do it. Ooh, good to know. Okay. We're gonna